I found the message by accident, scrolling through an old wedding planning group chat I'd forgotten I was even still part of. I was looking for a caterer's phone number. Actually, my niece is getting married next spring and asked if I remembered who we'd used. I never found the caterer's number. I found something else instead. It was dated the morning after my son's wedding. My daughter-in-law, Ashley, writing to her 3 bridesmaids, "Now that the ring's on, I don't have to keep sucking up to future Millwall. That performance is officially over." Performance, that's the word she used for 8 months of phone calls, dress shopping, the sweetest texts I'd ever gotten from anyone who wasn't my own child. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after that, my tea going cold, reading that sentence over and over like it might eventually say something different. I'm 65 years old. My name is Barbara. This is the story of the daughter-in-law who treated me like family for exactly as long as she needed to, and what I found out about the 18 months after. Michael is my only son. His father passed 6 years ago, and Michael has been, since then, most of what I still have in the way of close family. When he told me he'd started dating someone serious, I was cautiously hopeful. His last relationship had ended badly 2 years earlier with a woman who'd made it clear, in 100 small ways, that she found me a little too involved in her fiancé's life. I'd learned to brace myself a little by the time Ashley came along. When he brought her home for the first time, that bracing turned into something warmer, almost immediately. She asked me questions about myself nobody else's girlfriend had ever bothered asking. My late husband. My years teaching 3rd grade. She remembered the answers. 2, brought them up again, months later like they'd actually mattered to her. There was a week, about 4 months into their relationship, when I had a bad flare-up of my arthritis and couldn't drive myself to physical therapy for 3 sessions straight. Michael had a work trip. That whole week, Ashley showed up at my door the first morning, unannounced, and said she'd already cleared her schedule. She drove me to all 3 appointments. She brought soup on the second night, the kind my late husband used to make, because I'd mentioned it once, in passing months earlier, and she'd apparently remembered. At Michael's grandmother's 90th birthday party, my mother-in-law, sharp-tongued even at 90, Ashley overheard her make a comment about how the new girlfriends never stick around long enough to learn anyone's name. Ashley, without missing a beat, said, "I already know Barbara's whole 3rd grade class roster from 1994. Grandma Jean. I think I'm sticking around." The whole table laughed. I laughed too, delighted. The way you laugh when someone defends you before you even realized you needed defending. She started calling me Mom 6 weeks into dating Michael. Unprompted, the kind of thing that either means everything or nothing, depending on what happens afterward. I didn't know any of this mattered yet, sitting with that group chat open on my phone. Decades of careful memory suddenly needing to be looked at from a completely different angle. I know it now because of one sentence, and the word performance sitting right in the middle of it. I'll get to that message properly. First, you should understand exactly how convincing 8 months and then a full year of engagement on top of that of performance can be when you badly wanted it to be real. She helped me pick out my mother of the groom dress, drove me to 4 different shops over 2 Saturdays until we found the right one. She cried, actual tears, when I walked out of the alterations room wearing it for the first time, 3 weeks before the wedding. "You look exactly like the mom I always wanted," she said. I still have the photo Michael took of the 2 of us that day. Both of us a little teary, arms around each other in a shop mirror. Michael told me, more than once during their engagement, how relieved he was that Ashley and I got along so easily. "I was worried. After last time," he said once. "You two make it look easy. I believed every bit of it. All of it. Right up until the morning I found that group chat. The first sign came 2 weeks after the honeymoon, a family dinner I'd always been invited to, every month, for 3 years, suddenly rescheduled around my one unavailable evening with no attempt to find another date. I told myself it was a scheduling accident. Those happen. Another. About a month later, my calls with Michael, once weekly and easy, started getting shorter, rushed, always somewhere he needed to be, always Ashley's voice audible in the background, saying something I could never quite make out. A smaller one, Ashley stopped signing off texts with anything warm. No more love you, Barb. No more little exclamation points. Just logistics. Times. Addresses. The 4th. At Thanksgiving, 4 months after the wedding. The seating chart had been rearranged without anyone mentioning it to me. I was moved from beside Michael to the far end of the table, next to Ashley's uncle, someone I'd met exactly once, at the rehearsal dinner. The 5th, I offered, the way I always had, to help pay for part of their upcoming kitchen renovation, the way I'd helped with their down payment 2 years earlier. Back when Ashley had hugged me so hard I'd nearly lost my footing. This time, she said, breezily, we've actually got that handled now, a phrase that would have meant nothing on its own, except for how quickly and completely every other form of involving me seemed to have gotten handled too. The 6th, my birthday came and went, 5 months after the wedding, with a card that arrived 4 days late and said only happy birthday. Barbara, where it used to say happy birthday, Mom-in-law. Love you. With an exclamation point I used to roll my eyes at fondly. I mentioned, gently, that it had arrived a little late. Ashley laughed and said she'd been swamped, the same reason she'd started giving for almost everything by then. The 7th, I ran into one of Ashley's bridesmaids, Courtney, at the grocery store, 7 months after the wedding. Courtney seemed oddly flustered to see me overly warm, almost apologetic in a way I couldn't place at the time, asking twice how I was really doing, like she already suspected the honest answer. The 8th, Michael stopped mentioning Ashley in our calls almost entirely. Where he used to bring her up constantly, a funny thing she'd said. A show they'd started watching. By month 8, our conversations had narrowed down to weather and his job, the way conversations do with people you're actively trying not to get into anything real with. The 9th, the one that finally made me start paying real attention, I asked Michael, gently, during one of those thin phone calls, if everything was okay between us. He said, "Everything's fine, Mom," in the specific tone people use when everything is very much not fine. And they've already decided not to talk about it. I didn't push. I wish, now, that I'd pushed months earlier, back when Courtney's face in the grocery store aisle was still fresh enough that I might have actually asked her what she meant by really. I found that group chat 3 weeks later, still looking for a caterer's phone number I never did track down. I didn't stop reading after that first message. I scrolled back through 8 months of the same group chat, one I'd been accidentally left inside since a bridal shower logistics question, months before either of them realized I was still there. Further back, 3 weeks before the wedding, Ashley had written, "Barb keeps trying to get involved in the seating chart. Just let her feel included. We'll fix anything that's actually wrong after. Let her feel included." Not include her. Let her feel like she was. While the real decisions happened somewhere I wasn't part of. Further back still, from the week of the dress shopping trip, I still remember, as one of the sweetest afternoons of that whole engagement, the same trip where she'd cried in the alterations shop mirror, a different message, sent that same evening. Once she was home, "This is exhausting, but almost done. Once the wedding's over, I don't have to keep managing her feelings on top of everything else. Managing my feelings. The same afternoon she'd said I looked like the mom she always wanted, she'd gone home and described the whole day as a task. I kept scrolling. There were more smaller ones, easier to miss if I hadn't already known what I was looking for. A message calling the 90th birthday defense of me good material. Grandma Jean loved it. Like Courtney's laughter at that table had been an audience reaction to a bit, not a genuine moment. A message from 2 months before the wedding, planning exactly how long she'd need to keep it up after the ceremony before she could dial it back without it looking weird. Dial it back without it looking weird. There'd been a plan, an actual sequenced plan with a rough timeline attached for exactly how long the version of her I'd fallen for was scheduled to last. I thought about Courtney, then flustered, apologetic, asking twice how I was really doing in a grocery store aisle 2 months earlier. I found her number, still saved from wedding planning, and called before I could talk myself out of it. She picked up on the second ring, and when I asked, carefully, whether she remembered a group chat where the bridesmaids talked about me, she went quiet for a long moment. I wondered if you'd ever see that, she finally said. I told her more than once it wasn't right, talking about you like that. I should have said something to you directly. I'm sorry I didn't. Was any of it real? I asked her. Any part of it? I think some of it was, Courtney said, slowly, like she was working it out for herself as much as answering me. I think Ashley's the kind of person who can make something feel real while she's doing it, and still be keeping score the entire time. I don't think those two things are as separate for her as they should be. I didn't know what to do with an answer that honest. I still don't. Most days? I sat with all of it, for 4 days, before I said anything to Michael. I thought about the alterations shop, her tears when she saw me in that dress, and Courtney's voice on the phone. I think Ashley's the kind of person who can make something feel real while she's doing it, and still be keeping score the entire time. I turned that sentence over more times than I could count, trying to decide whether it made things better or worse. I still don't fully know. I thought about the seating chart at Thanksgiving and understood it differently now. Not an oversight. A small, deliberate test of how much I'd tolerate quietly once the performance no longer needed maintaining. Right on schedule, according to a plan she'd apparently written down. I thought about Michael, too, and what it would mean to bring this to him, not just proof that his wife had said something unkind in a group chat, but proof of a sequenced, deliberate strategy that predated their vows by months. I didn't know if he could hear that without it costing him something enormous, and I sat with that worry longer than I sat with my own hurt. I called my sister first, read her the messages out loud, needing to hear them in someone else's voice before I trusted my own reading of them. That's not subtext, Barb, she said. That's just what it says. There's a whole planned timeline in there. That's not a bad mood. That's a strategy with milestones. He's going to have to decide what to do with that, I said. I don't want to be the reason his marriage falls apart over a group chat. You're not the reason, my sister said. You'd just be the reason he finally sees something that was already there. I decided, that night, exactly what I wanted to say to Ashley, and exactly who needed to be in the room when I said it. Not a confrontation over dinner meant to embarrass anyone. Just the truth, laid out plainly, with my son present for all of it, so nobody could quietly manage the story afterward the way Handled had quietly managed everything else for the better part of a year. I asked Michael and Ashley to come for dinner the following Sunday, and brought the printed messages, folded, in my cardigan pocket the entire meal, waiting for the right moment. I made Michael's favorite pot roast, the same one I'd made every Sunday of his childhood, which felt, in hindsight, like its own kind of quiet message. I set the papers on the table after dessert. I found an old group chat, I said. I think you both should read the third message from the top. Ashley's face changed the moment she recognized the screenshot. Michael read it after her, slower, and went very still. That was just venting, Ashley said. Wedding planning is stressful. People say things in group chats they don't mean. There's more than one message, I said, sliding 2 more pages across the table. Read the one about dialing it back without it looking weird. Tell me that's venting too. She read it. She didn't have a quick answer ready this time. You called 8 months of getting to know me a performance, I said with a completion date and a plan for how to end it without anyone noticing. That's not stress talking. That's a strategy. Michael set his fork down. How long have you been sitting on this? 4 days, I said. I wanted to be sure I wasn't just hurt. I am hurt. I'm also right. She didn't have a real answer for that either. She looked at Michael instead, like she expected him to smooth this over the way he apparently always had. He didn't, not right away. Did you mean it? He asked her. Not me. Her. Not like that, she said. I mean, some of it, maybe, in the moment, but I do care about her. The dress shopping, Grandma Jean's party that was real. Michael, you wrote good material about Grandma Jean's party, I said quietly. The same day it happened. Ashley's face crumpled slightly, the first genuinely unguarded thing I'd seen from her in months. I don't know how to explain that in a way that doesn't sound worse than I meant it, she said. Try, Michael said. It was the first time all night he'd said anything to her instead of about the situation. She was quiet for a long moment. I think I've always been someone who performs a version of caring before I actually feel it all the way, she finally said. With my own family, too. Not just yours. I didn't realize how much I was doing it until I saw it written down like that. That doesn't make it okay. I don't know if it makes it better or worse. Honestly, you cared about getting through the wedding, I said. I'd like to actually find out, now, whether you care about the part that comes after not performed. Actually, nobody had a fully good answer for that night. But it was the first true thing anyone had said across that table in months, and I noticed the difference immediately. Michael and I talked alone 2 days later, without Ashley. I should have told you sooner that something felt off, he said. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, because the alternative meant admitting I'd married someone capable of that. It felt easier to believe I was being paranoid than to actually look at it. You married someone capable of growth too, I said. I hope that's still true. I don't know yet if it is. Neither do you, probably, he nodded slowly. She started therapy this week. On her own, before I even asked. That surprised me more than almost anything else in this whole story. I'd braced myself for excuses, for a slow campaign to convince Michael I'd overreacted. Instead, she and Michael are in couples counseling now too, which I take as a genuinely good sign, even though it's not really mine to take credit for or feel entitled to updates on. My relationship with Michael is stronger than it's been since the wedding regular calls again. Actual ones, not logistics, not weather. He told me, 3 weeks after that dinner, that he'd started noticing his own version of the same pattern performing enthusiasm at family events. Going quiet the moment it stopped being convenient, and that watching Ashley own her part of it had made it harder for him to keep pretending he didn't do a smaller version of the same thing. My relationship with Ashley is different. Careful, not warm the way it used to look, because I'm no longer willing to mistake performance for warmth just because it's more comfortable than the alternative. But it isn't cold, either, she's asked me, twice now. Real questions about my late husband again, slower this time, like she's actually listening for the answer instead of collecting it for later. She apologized properly a few weeks after that dinner, not the stiff, transactional version I'd braced for. "I don't expect you to trust it yet," she said. "I wouldn't, in your position. I'm just going to keep showing up honestly, and let you decide, on your own timeline, whether that's worth anything." I accepted the apology. I didn't pretend it undid anything. Those two things I've learned are allowed to be true at the same time. It's been 5 months since I found that message. I still get invited to family dinners now, real invitations, not rescheduled around me. I sit next to my son again, not his wife's uncle. Small things, but I notice all of them now. I don't think I'll ever stop noticing them again. I don't know if Ashley and I will ever have the relationship I thought we were building during those 8 months. I've made my peace with that uncertainty in a way I couldn't have 5 months ago, when I still believed uncertainty meant I'd done something wrong. Last month, Ashley called me directly, not through Michael, not a group text, to ask, tentatively, if I still had the recipe for the soup I mentioned once, years ago, the one she'd brought me during that bad week with my arthritis, before either of us knew what any of this was going to turn into. She's pregnant, 4 months along. I gave her the recipe. I also told her, gently, that I'd like to be a real part of this baby's life, not managed, not handled, not let her feel included. Actually included from the start, the way I should have insisted on being from the very beginning of her and Michael's relationship, instead of accepting whatever version of closeness was offered to me. "I want that too," she said. "I want to do this part right. I don't know yet if she will. I've decided that's allowed to be an open question instead of something I have to resolve today, out loud, on her behalf." I think about that word sometimes. Performance? She meant it as something she could quietly stop doing once she didn't need it anymore. I've decided to take it differently. I stopped performing gratitude for scraps of inclusion I used to accept without question. I stopped performing patience for a relationship that only worked when I made myself smaller and quieter than I actually am. That word cost her the version of me who accepted, let her feel included as good enough. It's the only part of this whole story I'm actually grateful for, and if this next chapter, this grandchild, this whole new stretch of family, turns out to be real instead of managed, I intend to notice that too, this time, months earlier than I noticed the last thing. I'm paying attention now. I plan to keep doing that for as long as any of this actually lasts.